get you more contacts is you first of all you got to know where they are, how they're operating, etc. So our next instructor here will be Bill Salyers, AJ8B. He's the president of the Southwest Ohio DX Association, which I used to be a member of for several years when I lived in that area. And what a group! Boy, again, there's a lot of expertise in that group. A lot of guys that have been on the expeditions. So, without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Bill.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thanks for having us down. I really appreciate it. It's always an honor to speak to a group. It's going to be hard to follow Glenn. I'll do the best I can. And it's always tough before lunch because everyone's saying, wonder what they're having, or wonder where the sandwiches are, so I won't be offended. What we're going to do is we're going to look at some tips and tricks and techniques that I've learned over the years as far as getting more DX in your log. And I'm glad you have the printouts, so you don't have to take notes. I think you already know there's 183 slides, so I'll get through them quickly. 65, but whatever. So here's some stuff we're going to talk about. Logging software, spots, splits and filters, something called tail ending, partial calls, and timing, which I found to be incredibly effective. We're going to talk about lists. And people that are experienced DXers are like, what? We're going to talk about lists? Potpourri, which is a whole collection of quick goodies for you. And then there's a silver bullet to work in DX. It is the single most important thing. And if you've looked ahead in the slides, you know what it is, but we'll get there. So here's who I am. Just a couple little things about me. I've been DXing for a couple of solar cycles. I've been licensed since 71. I did get mobile DXCC, which was pretty cool, and I recently got the ARL Triple Play and the Trident Awards, which I was happy with. And I've got the challenge at just over 1,800. There's a few extracurriculars that I'm involved in as far as I like to do a lot of writing and reading. Newsletter editor for both Southwest Ohio and the Twin Cities DX group in St. Paul. And Twin Cities is really a great group, almost as good as Southwest. Any of the Twin Cities guys here? Okay, good. So, and I heard that the Bureau was dying earlier, which I guess on one hand was good and the other hand is bad. This is a typical, I get my packet of N cards and I have to sort them for the ARL QSL Bureau. So I'm not quite ready to give up on it yet, but it is diminishing. There's no question. I've got a fairly modest station. I've got a 6BTV vertical. I got a hex beam and a 160 meter vertical, and that's what I use. And I've got a couple dipoles in the air in different places. So you might be asking yourself, well, should I even be here today? I mean, it's a great bargain for $15, but why should I be here? Well, the question can be answered. Do any of the next scenarios apply to you? Well, if that's the case, then yeah, you probably do deserve to be here, right? This is one we run into quite a bit. He's a DXer, but he's only in contests. DX is always on your mind. Now, this one strikes me personally because when I was in junior high and my dad, KTWE, we would drive around and he would just say a sign, I-75 North, and I would have to give it to him. I'd have to read it out to him in Morse code. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, that's my dad. I got to hang on to this. Balance is important. So for those of you like Glenn and some of the guys I brought with me, when you start getting 250 and 300 and 310, it really doesn't matter if you've slept or not. It really doesn't matter if you got to work the next morning. If you got to be there at 3 a.m., you're down there at 3 a.m. And Jay and I were talking in the early days, we used to have this phone chain. So at 3 a.m., if Jay worked S79, he knew I needed it, he called my house. And then I would call the next person, and there were a lot of unhappy people about that, but it happened. So anyway, what a relaxing hobby. So the one thing I think it's really important to get started, and this is purely a personal opinion, is logging software. So I'm going to start with something called DX Lab. Now, this is not a plug for DX Lab. It's free. It's a huge support community, and it was written by one of the original architects of LOTW, Dave Bernstein, AA6YQ. I've never really used any other software but this. And I'm going to show you why I like it so much. So these are some of the screens you can have. You can use complex parts of it. You don't have to use any if you don't want to. It allows you, for instance, to identify 5 or 6 spotting nodes and have them all combined so you have one screen to look at. It looks at your log and determines what you need, what you don't need. It will text your phone. It will do those kinds of things. So I have found DX Lab to be a great suite of applications, but it's important to kind of know what you need and when you need it. So here's some of the features. Most software programs now, logging programs, have these features. I just happen to like this because it's all integrated, and at the time, it's free. When I needed one, it was free, and I didn't want to spend any money. It's still free, but the key for me is, for tracking QSOs, for finding stations I need, for real-time stuff, it has something called real-time award tracking. And when you see a spot, if you click on it, this entire grid lights up, and it will tell you what band you need it on, what mode you need it on, where you need it. I can look at IOTA, I can look at DXCC, I can look at all the stuff across the top, all on one single click. As soon as I click it, it shows me in real time exactly what I need. So when I'm sitting in the shack and I see something come up, this is a huge time saver for me. I know FJP is a great piece of software. I don't know if they have something like this or not. If they do, great. If not, this is kind of a silver bullet for me. What about spots, or where is the DX? Well, I think one thing that's really important when it comes to spots, and what a spot is if you hear a certain country on the air, you have a little piece of software on your PC that you can put in the DX country, the frequency, any comments you want. He's a good CW operator, or he's poor English, or whatever you want to put in there. And when you hit send, it goes out to all the people that are listening to it. So instead of Jay calling me on the phone, he can just put this spot and I'll receive it. So here is my what my spotting window looks like. And I can control this really well, because it doesn't help me to find out that the Seychelles Islands are on and being heard well in England. It doesn't help me at all. But it helps me if I know that Brian, who lives pretty much down the street from me, has heard them, and they're S5 or S6 or S7. That's important to me because I've got a good shot at working them. So you can select bands, you can select modes, you can select a number of different things. So this is another, I think, a key tool if you're looking at software or logging software. The other thing I like to do is sometimes I'll say, okay, in my case, I'm doing this right now. In the next 3 months, I'm going to work Bangladesh. Never worked Bangladesh. I'm at 326, but I've never worked Bangladesh. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get them. So I'm starting to do research on, in this case, this was for Singapore, but Bangladesh. When have they been spotted? Who spotted them? What time of day? What was the signal report? And I'll start to find out when those stations are on. Maybe I can find a pattern. This guy's on every night when he gets home from work, and I can see that repeated. So those are the kinds of things that you start looking for, some data mining. Now, there's another tool that a gentleman in the back, KDV, shared with me, and it's called Ham Alert. Does anybody in here use Ham Alert? It is absolutely game changer. It's a free app. You put it on your phone, and you can tell it how you want to configure it, what countries you need, a lot of different things. And every time something comes up that you need, your phone will buzz. And you can turn it off. You know, you're in the middle of a meeting, and all of a sudden you're running out, and everybody says, oh, must be Ham Alert, right? So, but that's what it looks like on the right-hand side. It gives you the call, the location, any comments. Ham Alert is terrific. It is really, really good. Okay, I know we're going 90 miles an hour, but that's okay. So we got logging software, we got spots, we got Ham Alert. So there's a couple things already. Then we get down to, I've got a radio in front of me, okay? How many people in here that have an HF radio of some sort feel like they know 75% of it? Okay, I agree with you 100%. I know that's what happens. We get used to certain settings, and we don't go back and look. Well, another guy in the back, another mentor, Jay, when I first met him in the mid-'80s, we were talking, and I was a new DXer, and it was kind of like, you got to know your filters. You've got to know your filters, and you should operate split all the time. Know your filters and know your splits. And you start drilling down on the radio, and you start finding out, my goodness, I'll show you this in a minute. I've got 2 signals right here, and I can take this one out, and I can clearly hear what's going on. So we're going to talk about splits first. Okay, so this is split. Remember the rugby picture a minute ago? Same kind of thing. So what you don't want to be is all the cats out here. You want to wait for the mice to escape and then nail them. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to wait for that guy to just kind of get out of the way. So I need a volunteer. Oh, great. Thank you. Right in front. All right, you're going to volunteer. So what I want to do is I'm going to say, when I say call, I want everybody in the room, not you. Everybody else is going to give me your call at the same time. Blah, blah, blah. And then I'll point to you, and then you say your call out loud. Okay? And then your job is you're going to tell me which one did you hear clearly. Okay? So everybody, call. Who did you hear? Yes. Have you ever listened to pile-ups and everybody's calling at once? Oh my gosh, it's horrible. I don't care what radio you have, you're not going to split that out. So sometimes getting up 5 or up 10, even though they might say up 5, go up a little bit higher because that will help. I have split enabled all the time. I don't care if I'm working Germany. If there's interference or he can't quite hear me or whatever, I just have it on all the time. And maybe the split's set to 0, but I have it on all the time. So one of the hams in our club, WAGEX, Joe, tells a story about, and I think Glenn mentioned this earlier. This is the rock that they really can't put anybody on, so they had to build a structure around it just to call on an island. This is what he was talking about, so it's legit. Joe's listening to the pile up. He'd been on it for days, couldn't hear a thing, and then he hears the operator say 195. That's all he said, 195. So Joe instantly goes up to 195 and gets him on the second call. So it was guy's name was James Brooks, and he got so tired of the pileups just raining down on him, he just threw a frequency out, and a number of people actually heard it because they were listening. There they went, and Joe got them, and they were off the air the next day. So Joe loves to tell that story because it's legit about how you need to listen. Okay, what about filters? Why are filters a big deal? Well, filters can do a couple things. And this is a very generic slide. Your mileage may differ with your radio. But essentially, there's a couple of different kinds of filters you can have. Low-pass filters, high-pass filters, and here's how they work. They attenuate or take away all the stuff below what you're listening to and or above what you're listening to. So the only thing left is what's called the pass band, or just that signal you want to hear. And then how narrow that gets or how wide that gets or how sharp that gets kind of depends on the radio or how you tune it. Okay, so a lot of rigs have CW filters, right? So you put a narrow CW filter on, and what you start doing is you start overlaying these filters so that the only thing you have left is the one in signal. Okay, so you're taking all the garbage out to the right and to the left, and all you have is the pass band, and then you're listening to your CW signal. And when you get used to this and you learn how to use it, there are times where you forget anybody else is on the frequency because you can hear them so clearly, and they're the only ones in your pass band, and it just works great. So if you're not familiar with your filters, take a look, take a look, take a look. On my particular rig, I have something called a tracking notch filter, and what you can do with that is once you point, like maybe that is a could be the electric fence of my neighbor next door, and that particular day is causing interference. I can notch that out, and no matter where I go on the radio, it stays there and it notches that out. So it's really nice for that. It actually tracks the signal. It doesn't track the frequency you're working at, so it never moves off that signal. So it's a very effective tool. General guidelines on when to use what features. And these are purely personal choice. One thing, has anyone in here tried 160 or about to try 160 or have interest in 160? Okay. The last 2 falls and winters, I've played around with beverages, which I'd never done before, and what a difference, a receiving antenna. A beverage is basically literally a piece of wire that you stretch out as far as you can, and you use that as a receive-only antenna. And I can't believe the difference it makes. And you look at it, there's not a whole lot to it. It's an antenna and a resistor, maybe a capacitor, but what a difference it makes. Second receiving antenna. Okay, now we're going to have a little more class participation, but I won't pick on you this time. 3 different concepts: tail ending, partial calls, and timing. Okay? The key is you got to be able to hear them. I hear stations do this and they can't hear the DX. So why are you worried about partial calls? Why are you worried? You can't hear them. Don't call them. I can't stress that enough. If you can't hear them, don't call them. And if you've been on HF, and I think Glenn mentioned what a nightmare pileups can be, part of it is guys are just throwing stuff out there and they can't hear them. I don't know if they're waiting for the C to part and then they'll hear it come back. I don't know. But they just throw it out. The other thing, tail ending, partial calls and timings, you got to practice this. You have to practice this. And honestly, not all DX stations appreciate it. Okay? Yeah, I'll tell you what I mean by that. So tail ending's an interesting thing. I try to do this a lot. I found out it's actually pretty effective. So here's an example. My friend K1FJ has just worked the P5 in Korea. Like that's going to happen. And Frank says, hey, thank you, 59 Ohio. And right as Frank finishes, I drop my call in there. So the P5 has not yet had a chance to call QRZ or CQ, but he knows Frank finished and now he heard my call. He says, okay. And a lot of times the same save time. He'll say, K1FJ, thank you, AJB59. So if you can tail end and you can do it right and you hit it right there, they'll do that. They don't always do it. They don't always like it. But if it works, listen to them, which is another part of listening. How are they operating? How are they working, these people? You listen to them. Tail ending is a very effective strategy. Partial calls. This one I typically don't use. But a partial call in the very same scenario on phone might be, Frank finishes up and says, thank you, 59 Ohio, and I just yell out 8 Bravo. Well, now if he comes back and says the 8 Bravo, go ahead, maybe it's AJB, maybe it's KB2 Bravo, Sierra, there's a Bravo somewhere, and people will answer to that. I also know, there was a great story that a ham Cade LEE told me, that he got so frustrated with a guy who kept yelling partial calls, he finally said, the 4Z, you're in the log, don't call again. So it's probably not a good idea. If they don't like it, you don't hear other people doing it, don't do it. But sometimes the partial call works. And again, you have to listen. When I was in the car, when I did a lot of DXing from my car, I used this a lot more because I'm looking for any advantage at 100 watts in a car. I mean, even if I turned and went the other direction, it wouldn't make any difference. So anyway, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You just got to try it. We did the timing already. Everybody got that, right? You heard that. Everyone came out, and then somebody came into the end. And it's no different on CW. In fact, I can't tell you how many times this has worked on CW because everybody will come in at once. Even if he says up 5, from 5 to 7 or 8 or 10 KC up, they're all pounding away, and just kind of pause for a minute and just let them go. I would encourage you, certainly the guys that came with me, and then Glenn also, but I would encourage you to take some time and K9 with Carl also, and ask them today while you're here, what's it like to be on the other end? And I always, in the podcast we do, I always ask the DXer that, what do I need to get in the log? And I'll tell you what they said in a minute, but take it, that would be my question for you all today, is ask one of these guys, when you're sitting there and you have these mile-high pileups and you know you're going to work 100,000 Qs, what's the difference? What's it going to take me to get in the log quickly? Because it is a little bit of a quick shot. Propagation changes. They sound great today. Maybe tomorrow they're gone, right? So you got to try to get them when you get a chance. Okay, here's what a list operation is. An operator with a better than average station invites DX stations to call him, okay? The operator keeps a list of available stations. So I may say this is 88FD DX list operation. Any station interested, come now. And maybe 10 or 12 guys will throw their calls out there. So he literally makes a list. And then he has DXers that have checked in with him. Oh, sorry. He's had DXers that have checked in with him. So now maybe the first guy is, K1AA. Who do you want to call? Well, I'd like to try to call the guy in Australia. Well, then he puts them together. They get to talk, and then they're done. Then they go to the next one. So it's a list. You've got DXers sitting there, and you've got usually stateside operators sitting there, and they just go down the list. For the most part, it's frowned on because sometimes the control operator will make sure, okay, Jay, you heard that you were a 5'9", right? Well, you really shouldn't be helping them, right? They should just be making the call. So it's frowned on, to be honest. It's not an overly accepted practice. However, when I first put the rig in the car, I'd never operated a mobile before. I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out or not. I don't know if I have installed correctly. I don't have the antenna tuned correctly. So I went up, found a list operation, and I checked in. And I was able to work New Zealand sitting in my driveway. I thought, this thing works. And I did log it. I thought, what the heck, right? So it's also a great way to overcome microphone jitters. So if you're new to sideband and you haven't really made too many QSOs before, it's a really great way to find a list operation and to get on and to work some guys and get that out of you. And if it's your thing, that's great. That's terrific. So I use it in the car. And again, not every operator favors this, and that's okay. You're doing what you want to do to chase DX, and that's cool. That's what's really important. I'm just kind of giving you a heads up. All right, here's a whole bunch of stuff in a hurry. Like this was. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in a hurry. One really good website to keep in mind is ng3k.com. He seems to have a magic list of all upcoming DX expeditions, and that is whether they're going to Jamaica or they're going to Bouvet. He has this running list. Now, this is a little bit old. But again, remember I said I was going after Singapore earlier, or right now I'm going for Bangladesh. I check this about every other day just to say, hey, are there any announced expeditions that I missed? And he'll have all the details, all the information there. You just go to the website and check it. Okay, so for me, there were none listed. The other thing I like to do is I'll try to chase DX during contests. But what good would it be for me to chase Singapore if Singapore's never on a contest? So I went out to CQWW.com/results, and they list the results of the previous X numbers of years. So I went to the previous 3 years and searched for 9 Victor. And darn if I didn't find that there were at least 3 stations in each of those contests that logged at least 300 QSOs or more. So I know there's going to be 9 Victor activity out there. And I can find their calls and maybe shoot them an email to make sure they're going to be in there and when they might be operating. So that's another way for you to track down the ones you need, the ones that are a little bit harder to get. Now, there's a concept called the gray line. That's not me. The gray line is the line between daylight and darkness and darkness and daylight. It's also called the terminator. And even when the sunspots are 0, and Carl, make sure I'm right on this, when sunspots are horrible, the gray line can still yield some DX, correct? And he's going to tell you why later. But the gray line is something if you're able to be at home when the sun sets or the sun rises, get on the radio, because you're going to find stuff on there you're not going to find other times. And sometimes it lasts for a while and sometimes it falls out. But the gray line is really, really important. The other thing you can always do is when you're working someone, ask them if you need them on another band. Okay, so for instance, I was working a contest and I worked Alaska on, I think I was on 40, and I didn't have them on 80 yet. So I thought, well, let's just ask them. So I said, hey, you guys have do you have a station on 80? And they said, yeah. So I just went down to the frequency and gave you and worked them. And it really worked out. So how do you ask him? In my case, I said 5904 was my return to him. And then I said 80 meters, question mark. That's all. And he replied and said 3503. So I thanked him and I went to 3503 and I QSI'd and I got him. And it was kind of easy. I mean, there they were in the clear. I got them. But I don't think I hadn't finished going up and down 40 meters yet, so I probably would have missed them perhaps. But I was able to get them. And I got a cool card for it too, so that was all right. Check the work bands during a contest, okay? During a contest. So work bands, as you heard earlier, are not included in contests, right? They don't want all that activity down there, or the original agreement was that we wouldn't do it. So during a contest, there are DXers that like to get on the work bands because they don't want huge pileups. So they're happy to go to 12 or 17 or 30. This 9J2BO, Brian Otter is his name. Brian almost always works the work bands on contests, like clockwork. When there's a contest, he's on the work bands. He's just there. So if you needed 9J, Zambia, check him out on the work bands because that's where he is. I don't think that's what she meant, but that's how I took it. And I agree with what you said earlier. I think 30 meters is a terrific band. Okay, in summary, We're not quite done yet, so don't go running for lunch yet. So I got this from Jay. I stole this from K4ZLE, no question about it. He said yes, so I've been using it forever. You take the DX chase and you divide it into 3 layers. This is what I would recommend, okay? You heard us talking about Scarborough and Bouvet and all these places, and it's certainly something you should chase if you're interested in DX, but over time, it's easier to break this into something that you can take a bite out of. So Jay had stressed, I think it was weeds in a garden, right, Jay? You go through and you get the easy to reach weeds first, and then the second pass through a little harder. And we did the same thing with countries. So number 340, which is the US and Germany and Japan, up to 220, 219 to 100, and then the top 100 are tough. So what does it take to move from level to level? Well, in my mind, level 1 thoughts are, don't be timid. If you hear a station working, jump in there and try to get a hold of them. Right? Don't listen. You're going to listen, they're going to fade, you're going to miss an opportunity. You at least got to get in there. Second thing, embrace CW. We have somebody who joined CW Ops back here in the corner. Well done. CWOps.org. It's a great way to learn CW. If you want to learn CW, it's a great way to increase your speed. DX University is another website with all kinds of resources on it. Find an Elmer. So that's my Elmer. So I brought in the car down from Dayton today, or Cincinnati today. We had almost, what did we count? 200 years experience, right? 200 years of DXing experience. So my mentors are sitting back there. They were kind enough to, they were coming anyway, but they allowed me to ride with them. And they have all kinds of experience. Glenn's the same way. Carl's the same way. All kinds of experience. So you really need to find somebody that you can bug and send them emails and ask them questions. It's BR549. There's a lot of good DX organizations around. Western Kentucky is someplace that you want to join. North Alabama is a good one. Southwest ours is a good one. Twin Cities is a good one. Now, I don't know about North Alabama. I think they do this, but both Swadexa and Twin Cities, we have programs every month that we put out on Zoom. So you don't have to come to Cincinnati every month to join our meeting. You can join us via Zoom. The NCDXF, this is a great organization that funds the expeditions, and they help. We talked about integrity earlier. They make sure that the expeditions that are accepting $200,000 donations from them are legit, and they're going to get there and they're going to make it in the whole bit. So NCDXF is a great organization. Indexa, the International DX Association, is a good one. What else have I got? All kinds of web resources, and above all, have fun. I love going through my logbook every once in a while, and I'll think, well, that was a pretty good day. I worked the Ukraine, and then I worked Estonia, and then I worked France. I mean, none of those are rare. It's kind of fun. You kind of look at it and say, oh, yeah. And some of us sometimes will look up a country and say, oh, yeah, that's the capital, or it's not the capital, or why was propagation? You know, sometimes maybe you get on the air and you can only work Hungary. You're scratching your head like, why can I only hear Hungary? I just worked 11 guys in Hungary. Are there no other hams on anywhere in Europe? And that's some of the really cool things about propagation. You just don't know. Use the gray line. Propagation changes. The more time you spend in the chair, the more time you'll learn about propagation. When is it good? When is it bad? When are you wasting your time? In all fairness, the propagation section of Carl is absolutely fascinating, but I usually use that as a secondary. I just go down and throw the radio on and tune around, and then I pay attention to the K-index and stuff, but just get in front of the radio and go. Learn your rigs. We said this. Splits and filters. Read. And some of these books are over here, which I was really glad to see. There's newsletters. We have a good newsletter, I think. Twin Cities has a good newsletter. A number of good books, a number of good newsletter. All right, now we're looking at the second level. It's that medium group of DX stations we're trying to work. What equipments? Well, you already have a radio, obviously. Maybe now you want to add an amplifier, perhaps, or headphones. Headphones, to me, are a must, an absolute must. You got to have headphones. K0MD, a friend of mine in, where's he at? Well, he's in St. Paul. Scott recommends multi-modes. If you're going to do anything, you got to be able to move from RTTY to FT8 to FT4 to CW to sideband, and don't let it bother you what mode you're on. Just work them. Get them in the log. Again, I go back, give Jay credit for this. Split is critical, and know your rig, know your filters. Can't stress that enough. Know who is on as when. So here's another great website, WA7BNM website. Now, I use this because sometimes I'll get on 40 meters or 20 meters, and I'll hear all this CW activity, and I'll hear funny exchanges. 59, 40, 1011. What is going on? So I'll go out to his website, and I'll find out, oh, that's the Japanese DX contest. Okay, Japanese DX contest. Where do I need Japan on for this year? Oh, I need it on 15. Now I'll go to the 15-meter CW section and maybe tune around a little bit. So that contest calendar is very important. And you hear me say this again: learn propagation, learn your equipment. A lot of resources. You can hear a plug in here, right, for DX clubs. I couldn't resist. DX forums and read. Bernie, W3UR, has a great real-time DX information newsletter. It's called the Daily DX and the Weekly DX. And as you start getting into this and you want to find out who's on and who isn't on, and Equatorial Guinea was just canceled, by the way, because the government got involved. And did these guys get home or not? You get these updates. So that's really important stuff. DX World, dx-world.net, they have this really cool chart that I'm showing out on the right there. I print that off every week, and I lay it right on top of the rig. So at a glance, I can see, okay, on this date, these guys should be active, can find out where they're at, and do my other research. A lot of stuff, right? Level 3, equipment: audio, enhanced earphones, DSC speakers, tailored microphones, stress lock. Now we're getting in that 1 to 100 or 1 to 99. So this is really the difference between on a roll and not on a roll, or 300 and 350. Okay, so you start really worrying about details like, can they hear me? Can I actually talk in the microphone? And maybe I have the emphasis on the low frequencies too much or not enough, and I sound garbled when I come out, or they have to tune me very exactly to be able to understand me. I don't want that. So sometimes you have to get into all this. And you're right, you really got to keep this up. Sorry. Amplifiers. Do you have a no-tune amplifier? Do you have a full power amplifier? Does it have a long duty cycle? I didn't think a no-tune amplifier was that big a deal. Okay. And then once I got a no-tune amplifier, it was like, my goodness, I just saved 3 minutes. I know that didn't seem like a big deal, but again, some the expeditions, for instance, will go by call areas. So when, Sable Island's on and they're saying 8 call area, he's only going to be calling the 8 call area for a few minutes. And then he goes to the next one. Well, if I get into the middle of that, I'm waiting for the amplifier to warm up and I can't get there, I'm going to wish I had a no-tune amplifier. So if that's in your budget, in your plans, it's a good way to spend money. What? There's other ways to spend money? No, there's not. Out. I'm kidding. All modes, all bands, all tactics, everything goes. And Glenn pointed this out earlier. It is longevity. It's absolutely longevity. You've been at this since day one, and you're just continuing to get better and better. Now, this is an interesting one to me. I was glad to find this data. So the ARL did a survey a couple of years ago as to what the antenna type for a typical HF station would be from the general population. And this is what they found. And then a group in Italy, they did a survey that was worldwide, and this is what they came up with for DXers. And I think it makes sense, but 52% of DXers had a beam or a Yagi versus 19% of just general hams. So you start looking and saying, well, here's some of the more specific things I need. I need to be able to have directional reception. I need to be able to transmit in a directional way. And I want you to think, too, a beam and Yagi, right away you're thinking probably tons of aluminum and lots of money. But I have a hex beam up that costs a few $100. I have it on a push-up pole with a TV rotor on it, and it works fine. It works perfectly fine, and I don't have a lot of money in it. And I didn't have to pour a concrete base either. So you can get these things going without a huge outlet. So do the research first and see what you can come up with. Now, what's common to all of these things? Well, another mentor of mine has always told me, work them first and confirm them later. So I don't care if I hear Korea, I'm going to work them even though I know there's nobody there. Because how do I know something didn't happen behind the scenes? I'd hate to not work them and find out that Brian did and he got confirmation for it, right? So I wouldn't want that. I couldn't stand it. Work them first, QSLs, Logbook of the World, software, DX Lab, clusters, contests. So these are all the things that should be in your toolbox, I think. Airtime. I can't stress it enough. Time in the chair, time using your radio, time listening. It cannot be overstressed, I think. Now, what's the silver bullet? And there is one. There is a silver bullet. You want to get better at this? What's the number one component needed to break a pile up? Is it full power? Do you need a big amplifier? I know you're looking ahead, so the suspense is gone. Do you need a great receiver? Do you need great antennas? Well, we interview DXers every month for our newsletter. And one of the questions we always ask them is, what do I need to get into your logbook? And 57 of them said the number one thing you need to do is you need to listen. You need to listen. The DXer wants to get you in the log. They want to get you in the log as quickly as they can, but you need to listen. And what drives me nuts is when I hear somebody work them and the guy say, oh, can you repeat your call again? You've been listening for 15 minutes. How do you not know his call? Or they used to always say, well, what's your QSL route? Really? He's got 9,000 people calling him and you want to know what that is now? I don't think so. So listen. And when you listen, you'll start to realize, wow, a really good operating practice is this and this and this. It'll teach you so much. And I think when I had the rig in the car, I mean, I have 100 watts in a Chrysler. I mean, who am I going to work? And I worked a lot. And it's because I really got much better at what I was doing. I had to listen. Sometimes you miss an exit. Okay, that happens. But there's trade-offs to everything, right? But you got to listen. Okay, that's what I have. I think I made the time okay? A few minutes, okay. Sir. Okay, the question was, when I want to find a good DX cluster, and there's a list of 17,000 of them out there, which is correct, which one do I pick? The one physically closest to you is a good answer. The other thing you can do is, if you know a couple of DXers in your area, ask them what they use. And that's kind of what I did. But yes, the one closest to you is really good. No questions like when's lunch or what?
Any questions at all from anybody?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, we had a conversation about this on the way down. Yeah, I will. So the question was, when the guy says working split, maybe he says up 5 to 10. So what he does is he will listen to the transmit side of the split to find out where the station last worked was located, right? So maybe the guy says from 215 to 220, and the last one he heard was 218. So he's going to call him right there. Or maybe he'll go up one and call him right there. So, and that's exactly right. So you want to try to follow that and find out where the guy is. There was another ham that told me one time that if you listen long enough, you will see the pattern. So maybe Glenn's on his DXpedition and he works a guy at 215, then he works him at 218, then he works him at 221, then he works him at 224. You see the pattern? He hits 227, and the next one's back down to 220. So if you start making notes, it's like, okay, I'm going to anticipate where he's going to call me, and I'm going to jump up to 221 and just wait. And that's where I'll make my call. So, yeah, that's a really good point. Kind of go in where he was and then follow up and see if you can work him. The other technique I learned the hard way was if you're using a spotting network and you hear somebody rare, work them first, then spot them. Don't do it the other way. Because I'm telling everybody in the world he's here. Now I'm going to go compete with all these extra guys, right? So that doesn't make any sense.
Talking about the splits, I've noticed here recently that the VX station seems to be randomly jumping around more than what I remember from five or 10 years ago. Is that something that's becoming more common on the VX side of things?
Jay, you just got back from Sable last year. What would be your answer to that? He says he's noticed that the DX stations are they're not being sequential. They're jumping all over the place.
For me, it depends upon what the pileup is. If the pileup is good operators, and they're anticipating, just like we were talking before. And so that whole pile is moving as I'm going. I'm saying, well, gee whiz, I'm not doing any good. So I might go a little bit more random than I would have normally gone. Typically, you're going to have a sequence, a normal sequence as a DX operator, like go up, then come back down, and you turn it just the same amount each time when you do that. But when the pileup gets really bad and you've got a bunch of guys, like early on, and you're on a fairly rare position, and the better operators are there, then they're right on you. So then I'll typically, myself, I'll go a little more random than I normally would. I think that's probably helped it. People with pan adapters now that didn't have them before are now able to see without really listening what the sequence is. But again, the key still is listen, listen, listen.
So keep the mic for a minute, because I talked about listening. We've stressed listening, listening, listening. And I remember on Sable, I think it was, you said JAs only. I heard you say that, JAs only, and a few American stations still called. How does that make you feel on the other end?
Expletive deleted.
So it is, you have to listen. You brought up another point, though, and now I'm drawing a blank, which is not untypical for me. No. I'll think of it. I'll think of it when we're done. That's what it was. Any other questions? Anything else? Sir?
I don't understand the DX cluster being closest to you. What do you mean by that?
Well, the idea would be that maybe there's a DX cluster in Bowling Green, let's say, and the people that are feeding it information would all be from around Bowling Green, okay? So when they put in, there's a certain station on at a certain time and frequency, the other people in Bowling Green would assume geographically they would have the same opportunity to work them or hear them as that guy just did. If I'm getting spots from VE7 up in British Columbia, if he's entering up there, then he's hearing him. The chance of me actually hearing him is not as good. Unfortunately, what I usually do is look at the call. I just look at the call. And W9RE is in Fort Wayne, right? Indy. So that's one I use, is the W9RE out of Indianapolis. Well, that's the other thing that happens if they all get linked together. Then
Instead of states, I think the best suggestion for clusters is look regional, East Coast, Midwest. I really don't care what California's listening to for this example, but I want to look at that corridor of the East Coast, everything east of the Mississippi. So pick out clusters that are very robust. And what I mean by that is when you connect to them and they tell you that they are connected to 100 or 150 or 200 other nodes, that means there's thousands of people that could potentially be connected there at the same time. And so look for the ones that are more regional. When you check into it, it gives you the login data and it says it's been up for 18 days straight, and it's got 300 or 400 users currently connected to 40 to 100 to 150 nodes. That tells you that it's a very robust cluster. And to follow up what you're saying, when I was on the backside of VP8PJ, the team wanted to be able to see real-time spots from their perspective on the island. And so AA6YQ worked with me and Gene and a couple of the other people. And so I was connected to 4 clusters at one time through DX Labs, England, Germany, Japan, US. If the US station spotted somebody, sometimes the cluster in Germany would give it to me maybe 1 to 2 seconds faster than the other ones would pile in. So because of the connection of the internet, the speed is so fast, but they got to be connected in that big web, a lot of nodes connecting to each other. That's the most important thing to look for.
yeah, I didn't want to go into that depth when I had that slide up there, but the cluster that AA6YQ created, you can put 5 or 6 clusters connected to it, and it will sort the spots on the origination of the spot. And then you can tell it region. I want U.S. Northeast, I want U.S. Midwest, I want U.S. West. And it really doesn't matter where you're connected. It looks at the origin of the spot. I didn't want to get into that detail, but that's how I use it. That's the DX Lab software. Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, Bill, you were talking about having the cluster right next to you, but I'll take as the hound, not the fox. I'll say if I'm looking for something, I'll see where my spots are coming from. So I might look at Europe and say, okay, it's open to that spot now, but I expect it to be coming across this way or the other way around. But so I'll look and try to anticipate. If I'm looking for a specific station or area, I'll see where else it's being spotted now, and then anticipate when they're going to come to me and not waste my time sitting there.
Great. Do I have one more minute? Okay, so I know what it was, and I actually meant to put a slide in on this. I know a lot of hams will try to work the expeditions, and they get really frustrated when they can't get through, right? And I've seen on the cluster, they put nasty grams out there, and they put some less than flattering things. Why can't these guys do this? And I think it's really important to understand, and the slide earlier was terrific, how much money this costs. These guys are taking 6 and 8 weeks off of work. In a lot of cases, the mission to Bouvet that failed, that boat almost blew up. I mean, they put a lot at risk when they do this. And Jay, where were you where the 80-mile-an-hour winds were going to rip the tents off the glacier, and there's like 4 of you holding it down and one guy's still working? So when I sit back in the basement, I can't work them on 30. I don't get nearly as frustrated as I used to get because they're really putting a lot out there. The other thing would be sometimes the expedition asks for, hey, can you contribute some money, right? $10 makes a difference. $20 makes a huge difference. So if you have that opportunity and you see, I'd like to see how this Bouvet works out, or Peter the First. I mean, between those two, I think those expeditions are going to cost over $3.5 million total, which is a staggering amount of money, you think, just for guys to go into a glacier and make QSOs. But they're doing it for us, and there must be a demand, or they wouldn't do it. So 10 or 15 or 20 bucks, I mean, I know that on one hand it's a lot, but on the other hand, if you can help them out, they appreciate it. So. Anything else? And we'll be around for a while if there's any more questions or comments or you need anything. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill.